All right, so here's the same idea, but it's a different method of how we factor. This time it's not a trinomial. We're going to use greatest common factor. So remember, this is not in factored form. It's things not multiplied together equals 0. We want to make it things multiplied together equaling 0. So we're going to kind of reverse. This is called the greatest common factor. Remember, we said it's like you're undistributing, okay, or reverse distributive property. So this is the answer after I've distributed. If I undo that distributive property, it would have been an x out front and an x plus 4 if I undistribute. Now, because the x has one term, I don't really need parentheses around it. So this is still two things times each other, even though they don't both have parentheses like the other kind. Okay, I've got x times x plus 4. So the solutions are going to be whatever makes each factor 0. So the x that makes the first factor 0 is 0. The x that makes the other factor 0 is going to be negative 4, because negative 4 plus 4 is 0, right? So those are my solutions. I could check them by plugging them into the original. So if I plug in 0 to the original, I get 0 squared is 0, plus 4 times 0 is 0, and 0 plus 0 is 0. It makes it true. You can check, pause the video, and check if negative 4 is a solution. Plug it in for x. You would have negative 4 squared plus 4 times negative 4 equals 0. I'm plugging it in for x here and x here. So check it and see if it's good. Okay, welcome back. So here's another one we can try. So again, I want to undistribute. So this looks like a 4x is what was distributed here. So then I'm going to undistribute and get 4x times x minus 4 equals 0. So what would be the solutions here? They would be whatever x makes this 0 and whatever x makes that 0, this factor 0. So I'll start with this one. If I plug a 4 into that factor, it's going to make it 0. And then, of course, if this is 0 times whatever the other part is, it makes it the whole thing equal to 0. Same thing happens over here. What makes this factor 0? Well, if I plug in 0 for x, 4 times 0 is 0, and that makes this part 0, which then would make the whole thing equal 0. So this is how you find the solutions, right? You factor it, get it as two things times each other, and then solve each one. If you can't see how these, like x equals 0 and x equals 4, what you can do is you can just take that piece out and make a little side equation. You want to make that whole piece 0. You could take this side out, this factor out, and say make it equal to 0. This is another way you can do it if you can't just see that it's x equals 4. So now I can just solve this equation. I add 4 to both sides, and I get x equals 4. That's how I came up with that. I did that in my head. But if you want to write it out, you can write it out like this. So this one, when you have 4x, you want that to equal 0. This time you're going to divide by 4 on both sides, and you'll get x equals 0. So that's how I got that one. All right, so I would like you to try this one on your own. Pause the video. Okay, welcome back. So if we undistribute, it looks like an 8x was distributed here. And it would have been distributed to an x plus 9. So I've got two factors, if two things times each other, right? If either one equals 0, so I'll do it the longer way. I'll write if the first one equals 0 or if the second one equals 0, those are our answers. Now I can solve each little mini equation. So in this equation, I divide by 8, and I get x equals 0. On this one, I subtract 9 off both sides, and I get x equals negative 9. All right, so that's what you should have gotten for these solutions. This is the second method. And again, by the way, you can plug in your negative 9 here and here for x and show that it equals 0. Okay? And this method is called the greatest common factor method. Notice, by the way, there's always two terms, not three terms. The last method was a trinomial, 3 terms. For greatest common factor, there's 2 terms.